We are creating power, more power. And I always believe in the old saying of more power to you.
92 years ago, construction commenced at the Grand Coulee Canyon, and once completed, the area would be forever altered by the concrete wall damming the powerful Columbia River. This monumental feat laid the foundation for the exponential growth of the American Northwest. The Grand Coulee Dam revolutionized hydroelectric power, irrigation, and agriculture in Washington state and the Northwest. This transformation in technology was at the expense of Native American livelihood and salmon population, which caused negative reaction. Slowly, reforms are being made to right the wrongs inflicted upon the tribal communities and salmon population.
The steel and concrete of the big Grand Coulee rise. Roll, Columbia, roll, roll, roll.
The Columbia River Basin was a barren desert known for hot, dry summers, cold winters, and insufficient rainfall. Historically, the basin was populated by Native American tribes, who used the basin to gather traditional plants in the Columbia River to harvest salmon. Due to the Homestead Act of 1862, the Columbia River Basin increased in population. Early homesteaders used shallow wells, creeks, and buckets to irrigate their farms, but much of the land was so dry that large-scale agriculture was simply not possible. With the growing economy, farmers needed a more efficient way to water their crops, leading residents in the area to look at developing the Columbia River. At this time, coal and oil steam generators were used for power, but were unreliable and dirty. Rudimentary hydroelectric dams, or white coal, had been a part of Washington state in cities like Spokane, Seattle, and Tacoma, but were still small-scale and less than reliable.
In 1918, among others, William Billy Clapp, a local Ephrata lawyer, and Rufus Woods, the editor of the Wenatchee Daily World, began to promote an idea for a dam at the Grand Coulee Canyon. However, many believed Washington state to be wilderness, with minimal demand for large-scale electrification, taxpayer money, and vast resources. Citizens also worried that government ownership of power production was a step towards socialism. Small-towners, or pumpers, preferred pumping water from behind a dam for irrigation, while influential Spokane companies like Washington Water Power Company favored canals to protect their profits and became the ditchers. After the long battle of pumpers versus ditchers, Grand Coulee Dam and the pumping plan were authorized and funded by the federal government. July 16, 1933, thousands watched as Washington Governor Clarence Martin and reluctant Sand Whale Chief Jim James drove the first stake into the ground, initiating the 9-year project. Construction was primarily administered by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation and was part of the Depression-era Public Works Administration, spearheaded by President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal. The project provided homes and jobs for thousands, while the nationwide unemployment rate was at 25%. 81 lives were lost during construction. However, this number was low compared to other projects during the time.
Governor Arthur B. Langley of the state of Washington puts the gigantic Coulee Dam into operation, and the first generators begin developing 10,000 kilowatts of power.
When operations began in 1941, Grand Coulee was the largest hydroelectric dam, generating electricity for a vast amount of the region. Once abundant power was available, Northwest culture began to shift and rural electrification became widespread. For example, electric appliances modernized homes and businesses, including oil lamps being replaced by incandescent lights that were easier and safer to use, allowing people to work inside into the evening. The Northwest transformed into an economic powerhouse and quickly became the fastest developing region in the United States. Grand Coulee Dam provided the electricity to smelt 1/3 of the aluminum for warplanes built in Seattle by Boeing. Along with this, 80% of the dam's generation capacity powered the Hanford nuclear site starting in 1942 to assist in the creation of one of the atomic bombs. In his 1948 campaign, President Truman commented, "Without Grand Coulee and Bonneville dams, it would have been almost impossible to win this war."
Although irrigation was sidetracked by the war effort, the pump generating plant began operation in 1951 and developed over 670,000 acres of dry desert into lush, thriving farmland. Today, crops are estimated to be worth over $3 billion annually. This irrigation water is affordable and beneficial to farmers, past and present.
I look forward to the day when the valley is opened up, the basin, of giving the first opportunity to those who need some good farmland in place of their present farms.
In addition, the dam made the upper Columbia River available for recreation, transportation, and managed floodwaters, saving millions of dollars.
Unfortunately, Grand Coulee Dam cut off salmon from their migration routes and upstream spawning grounds, severely decreasing the population. The loss of salmon had a devastating impact on the Spokane tribe and the 12 tribes within the Colville Reservation.
As we've lost elders over the years, we've lost some of the knowledge associated with the ceremony we conducted, of the spiritual connection to those fish, and some of the places that were important to us historically because of where salmon existed in the basin. It's a loss of culture, it's a loss of identity. We see some of the social issues that are associated with that. And really the only way to fix that, and I think we're doing a fairly good job at it, is to try to really restore that culture, restore that connection, restore that knowledge to the extent we still have it. We're trying to right some of those wrongs. So I think recognizing what some of those impacts are, you see like our phase 2 implementation plan for salmon introduction happening now to try to mitigate what some of those things are. And thankfully we've got support from the federal government with that $200 million commitment from Bonneville Power Administration.
After the flooding of Lake Roosevelt, over 18,000 acres of reservation land was submerged along with 11 towns, forcing thousands of residents and Native Americans to be displaced and leave their homes. This land contains settlements, cemeteries, and fishing grounds, including Kettle Falls, a historic indigenous salmon fishing site for thousands of years.
But I'm from Michelin, so I know that our old town existed right on the bank of the Columbia, so we not only had to move the community up in elevation about 1,000 feet, we also had to dig up a bunch of the graves that were there. And that's one of the challenges we continue to face today, is that as we see river levels go up and down with the operation of Grand Coulee, we see sloughing along the banks, and we continue to see those ancestors exposed.
Martin Louis, one of the last tribal members who speared salmon in the Columbia River, now eats canned salmon provided by a federal aid program. You asking me what did we do after the flood? We starved, we drank. I know 2 or 3 who committed suicide, said Louis. Both the Colville and Spokane tribes were promised a part of the dam's revenue. However, compensation was not received until decades later.
Colville didn't see any compensation for Grand Coulee's construction, Grand Coulee's operations, or the benefits that Grand Coulee has to non-Indians until the early 90s. So at this point, we get a payment once a year based on a formula that was negotiated as part of a settlement that, and I think it was, it's a decent amount now. It's about $25 million a year that we distribute to the tribal membership. But if you look at the amount of revenue and power that Grand Coulee generates, it's a really small percentage.
Grand Coulee Dam, promoted as the 8th wonder of the world, was a massive undertaking in the 1930s and 40s. The dam was finished on time and under budget, and many new technologies were developed due to the challenges of construction, proving man's ingenuity. Grand Coulee Dam is held as a construction classic, as well as the triumph of man over nature, and redefined the ideas of the construction community by encouraging others to push limits said to be impossible. The project supported the livelihood of farmers, engineers, and workers while creating a common goal for the United States during the Great Depression and World War II. Since the dam's construction, the Columbia River has become the most hydroelectrically dammed river in North America, with 14 dams on the 1,240 miles of the river, leaving only 50 miles of free-flowing water. With the addition of the third plant in 1975, which generates 2/3 of Grand Coulee's electricity today, and recent upgrades, the dam now has a capacity that can power 4.2 million homes per year. This makes Grand Coulee the largest U.S. hydropower producer, which has led to the region having one of the cheapest power bills in the nation. Despite the controversies surrounding the Grand Coulee Dam, it has undeniably revolutionized Washington state and the American Northwest through electrification and irrigation. The dam has created an inland empire with a booming agricultural production and a strong technological and industrial economy. Native American culture and salmon populations will never fully be restored, but reforms are slowly being made to right the wrongs. The Grand Coulee Dam has left a controversial legacy on the world that will never be forgotten.
Out and an oil well, it runs dry, but Uncle Sam will find its power where the river meets the sky. Roll, Columbia, won't you roll, 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 Columbia, won't you roll, roll.